Classic is one of those not to be missed events in historic racing. Peter Otto has been organizing this meeting during the month of May for the last 8 years now, and an impressive number of racing cars travel to the Belgian Ardennes, together with thousands of fans, collectors, club members, or all of the above. And one has to admit that the spectacle on the historical circuit, driven by thousands of cars since its creation in 1920, was of a very high level. Spa-Francorchamps is often labelled as the most beautiful circuit in the world, thanks to its surroundings, its rhythm and its roller coaster nature, but also thanks to one corner in particular, the Raidillon. The Raidillon is the climb between Eau Rouge and the Camel Straight. The corner is often mistaken for the Eau Rouge corner, but that one is the compression at the bottom of the Raidillon. The name Raidillon literally means short, steep hill, and this 17% climb throws the cars 40 meters higher and little over 200 meters of tarmac. The corner was created in 1937 when circuits tried to be as quick as possible. The Raidillon corner allowed Spa to eliminate the corner of the Ancienne Douane, a slow hairpin. In modern times, F1 cars take the Raidillon at almost 300 kilometers an hour, and the most courageous of drivers take it flat out. Do I take the Raidillon flat out? No, of course not. You're dealing with a coward here. I have to lift, but I don't brake, I just lift. It's still quick. We enter around 240 kilometers an hour and exit around 210. So when we hit the curbstones, the car shakes pretty roughly.
The car has 6 gears, but I'm in 5th gear. No braking, just lifting quickly and then full on the throttle up there.
No, certainly not. That is why I claim that those who go flat out have switched their brains off. The Group C cars are without a doubt the fans' favorites, due to their shape, their power and their sounds. Everything is in place to produce quite a spectacle, and there is an impressive plethora of car models here. Jaguar XJRs, Porsches 962, the record holders of the Spa 1000 kilometers, or even a Peugeot 905 with its howling V10 engine. During the Spa Classic meeting, its driver and owner Eric Maris had invited Eric Hélary to drive the car and retake the wheel of a car identical to the one he took to the Le Mans 24 Hours win, together with Bouchut and Brabham. It's pretty surprising, for I haven't driven this car since 25 years. I had the occasion to do a couple of laps with it, but on a track with new tires that must have been at least 20 years ago. It's really incredible, for I feel very much at home in the car. We have driven this car so often, we even did 6 times the 24 hours in testing before the race. I know where the buttons are, I know how the car starts, I don't have any stress, it's pretty easy to go quickly. A part of my life was formatted around this car, and even though it's been a while, the memories are still very vivid. Words of a passionate man. There's plenty of those in the paddock, and these are part of the Group C grid as well, with a more modest and slower car, but its history is as interesting. I've bought an Écurie Écosse, and there's only a couple of them. Écurie Écosse have won Le Mans with the Jaguar, the old curved ones, so they wanted to recreate that story. This car has done Le Mans twice, in 85 and 86. The first one was pretty chaotic. It only lasted for 4 hours, and in the second year the car was at the finish, even though it was really tough. So it's a real joy to keep this car alive and to take it from racetrack to racetrack. To be able to participate in the races of the Peter Auto meetings, one has to drive a car that's eligible in its category. And that is exactly what Lionel Bosch did by buying Écosse C285. Others are looking for the ideal car to be able to participate for less money. In Sixties Endurance, Régis Masson and Simon Nobili have simply asked Patrick Péter to advise them in finding an affordable car to be able to participate among these beautiful cars like the Shelby Cobra, the Jaguar E-Type or even a Ford GT40. And they've bought and carefully race-tuned this fine little Sunbeam Alpine. This car raced at the same time as the MGB. It's a little British roadster, a convertible to drive with the wind in your hair. Régis bought the car and it was completely stripped and repainted in the historic colors the brand used during the Le Mans 24 hours to give it some extra luster. These cars didn't go for the pure performance but more for the index of performance, or index of energy as it was called in the day. And they got some decent results at Le Mans. Don't bother to find the link between the Sunbeam Alpine and the Alpine brand. The British car just wanted to give the impression that it was the ideal car to take for a spin in the Alps with the wind in your hair. Obviously, there were plenty of British cars on the 60s Endurance grid, and some owners were so gracious to drive rare and little-known cars like this Lister Nobly, named after its peculiar bodywork.
I like the shape of the car, and yeah, that's why I choose it. The Nobly is not so many made. There are now replicas building now. And I think they did 10 or so.
This car even had a particular link with Spa, for at the end of the 50s it regularly beat the Aston Martin and Ferrari entries when it was driven by Maston Gregory and Archie Scott Brown. The latter unfortunately lost his life at this track, driving a Nobly. The race of the 60s Endurance grid finishes in the dark and is won by the unbeatable Latre Dubosco and Van Riet, driving a home race in Spa. The drive of the day is without a doubt set by another Cobra, driven by Charles Ferminich and Henry Moza, finally getting the podium finish they have been chasing for so long now. Charles did a great job during the first part of the race and gave me an excellent car. I could really attack at the end of the race and it was a lot of fun. With the great cars here racing during the night, it really is iconic. So we are really happy with this podium. We've waited a long time for this. 1964 and 2000, the Spa 24 Hours was a race reserved for touring cars. The 70s was probably the most iconic period of that era, with an eternal fight between BMW and Ford. That is exactly what the time machine called Spa Classic recreated during the night race of the Heritage Touring Cup. Of course, this is a fantastic moment, for Spa is the touring car circuit, and when we relaunched this grid a couple of years ago, we did it with this track in mind. We have a race during the day and during the night. Obviously, we don't do a 24-hour race with these historic cars, but in spirit, we get really close. BMW 3.0 CSL versus Ford Capri RS. The duel was fought on a treacherous track in the light of the headlamps, but also disturbed by a violent rainstorm. In the space of a couple of minutes, the pit lane transforms in a circus, and plenty of favorite is hit hard. The hierarchy is completely overthrown, and BMW crushes Ford by taking the top 8 positions in the race. But that might not have been the most important conclusion. What we will remember is the smiles of the drivers at the end of the race.
Comment expliquer ça? I've
been told that it's like an autopilot. You know where to brake, where to turn, where you take the curbs. You know the circuit, and the corners are well indicated. It's a great feeling.
Very fun to drive. The first time I've ever driven in the darkness. So not so good lights, but still very happy with the drive.
On Sunday morning, we witnessed an interesting meeting in the endurance pit lane, or a reunion to be more precise. This elegant gentleman is called Vincent Gay, and in 1973 he drove this BMW during the Spa 24 Hours.
I remember in the period the dashboard is simple, very simple.
Yeah, it's nice to have it simple.
À Francorchamps, à l'époque, on roulait sur le grand circuit de 14 km.
At the time, we drove the 14-kilometer-long Spa circuit. Starting with the Group 2 rules, the BMWs managed to pass the 200 kilometers an hour average speed on a single lap. After the Combe corner, it was almost completely flat out. And after the Stavelot corner, it was almost flat out as well. I remember that back then I did the lap with an average speed of 214 or 215 kilometers an hour. Vincent Gay still has the talent to go quickly. With this edition, he was let down by the gearbox of his Ferrari 275 GTBC. Driving in the greatest trophy, the grid reuniting the most beautiful and prestigious racing cars of the weekend. The Giulia TZ only weighs 620 kilograms and its lines are gorgeous. TZ stands for Tubolare Zagato, a Zagato design that was developed by Auto Delta. The sound of this small four-cylinder aluminium 1.6-litre boxer engine with twin-spark ignition is rather unique. This one might be a bit less gracious, but it's even rarer. This is a 1954 Cooper Jaguar T33 TT. Only 4 were ever built, and it's one of the oldest cars at the Spa Classic meeting, only to be seen in the Greatest Trophy.
This car has got a C-Type, Jaguar C-Type engine. This is 3.4 litre. And yeah, it's developed in race car, so you have to push her, you have to try to keep her happy, and it's got a big steering wheel, so it's quite hard work, at least for girls. So, but if you get used to it, she drives beautifully.
Those who tell you that if it rains in Belgium, it snows in Spa are liars, for during this weekend the weather was horrendous in all of Northern Europe, except in Spa. So the fans could enjoy the festive atmosphere to the fullest. There were plenty of clubs showing thousands of cars, both in the paddock and along the track. Some of them were put into the spotlights, like the 205 GTI Club, celebrating the 35th birthday of the French hot hatch. Or the Datsun 240Z, a car that suffered a tuning treatment for a long time, but is now completely rehabilitated. Today people like the Datsun as it is, and no longer as the base for a replica. So now the cars are brought back to their original state. There is still plenty of modified cars here, but some owners really want to bring their cars back to how they were originally. To celebrate 50 years of its Z models, the Datsun clubs could enjoy a parade lap on the circuit. Exactly 1 year ago, Peter Otto launched a new racing series, the 2-litre Cup. With its identical pre-1969 Porsche 911 2 litres, it's the only single-make series of the weekend. The idea was an immediate success. The 90-minute race saw 38 cars at the start. To race in the 2-litre Cup, some even crossed the Atlantic Ocean, like Argentinian drivers Zanqueta and Lapay. Another sign of the good health of the series is the presence of a large number of young drivers looking for exciting racing duels on track.
Yeah, it's fun. It's nice to have everybody in the same car. So in a lot of the other categories, it's about what car you have and how much power you have. Where here, it's about the drivers, which is fun.
To make the racing even more intense, races now last 90 minutes, and there are 2 categories of drivers, the gentlemen and the elite.
And I think, you know, there's a wide variety of driver ability, a wide variety of, you know, the level of preparation of the cars. and I think everybody's getting a bit of racing all the way up and down the grid. And I think also introducing a driver categorization system is also very good, because it kind of, well, it evens out the playing field, but it also makes the races a bit more interesting.
In the 2 Liters Cup, there's some real action to be seen, and some of the competitors drive on the limit or beyond. If you love endurance racing, you will certainly remember the BPR or FIA GT Championships, successful series held at the beginning of the century. Since 2019, the team of Peter Rondo has decided to revive those series by organizing races with GT and prototype cars of the 90s and early 2000s. In Spa, one could admire an Aston Martin DBR9, Ferrari 333 SP, the Lara SP1, Ferrari 550 ProDrive, Viper GTSR, Celine S7R and the Panoz Esperante. In 1996, Don Pallas, owner of a pharmaceutical company, went to a racetrack and said, "I want to win Le Mans next year."
Et il a fait la seule voiture à moteur avant qui était capable de battre les Mercedes.
And he made the only front-engine car, a car that was able to beat the Mercedes and the Porsche GT1 of the day, and won plenty of races. He did what he wanted to do. It was incredible. As a privateer, to go and beat the big manufacturers, that was crazy.
C'était quelque chose de fou de faire ça.
Don Panoz never succeeded in his main goal, winning Le Mans with a car carrying his name. But Jean Rondo did, and what's more, in 1980 he was even at the wheel of the car. This car, entered by its owner for this year's Spa Classic, is not a winning Rondo from 1980, but it's still an interesting machine.
Donc elle a fait 10 fois Le Mans, les 24 heures.
This car did the Le Mans 24 hours 10 times, from 1978 to 1988. So 10 times Le Mans, 7 times at the finish, 3 podium finishes and 5 class wins. It's a rather simple car with a tubular frame, but it's rather sturdy as well. And we did Peter Rondo's Le Mans Classic meeting in 2016, and it was obvious that its bodywork was made especially for Le Mans. For on the 100JS straight, it still produced the highest top speed of the meeting, even 3 years ago. And on the straight at 300 kilometers an hour, it doesn't move an inch. You could even let go of the steering wheel at 300 kilometers an hour. No worries. This elegant little prototype is a March. Yes, the brand created by Max Mosley not only produced single-seaters, but also a couple of prototype cars. There were only a couple of them, and there's even fewer now, but the one of Kevin Cook, the 6th owner of this car, is remarkably well preserved.
I chose the car because it's originally a famous make, March, and it's a very unusual car. Very few racing period, and very few do you see racing today. Because a lot of the Formula One cars from that period, and they were owned by very famous people. March was Max Mosley was one of the owners of March, and obviously everyone knows Max Mosley for all sorts of reasons.
Classic Endurance race is the final chapter of the Spa Classic weekend. A record weekend, for there were 339 racing cars on track and some 20,000 fans travelled to Francorchamps. Racing with historic cars becomes increasingly popular, and the Peter Otto series continue to highlight this part of our history's heritage.